The following story is a work of fiction intended for entertainment purposes only. Names, characters, businesses, places, events, and incidents are either the products of the author's imagination or used in a fictitious manner. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental.
If you looked at my life on paper exactly 1 year ago, you would have hated me. I was 31 years old, a senior project manager at a logistics firm making 6 figures, driving an Audi, and I had just closed on a 4-bedroom colonial in the best school district in the state. I was engaged to Sarah, a woman who was smart, funny, and beautiful enough that my friends constantly joked I must have saved a kitten in a past life to deserve her. I'm recording this now from a basement apartment that smells like mildew and cat litter, even though I don't own a cat. I have $68 in my checking account. My credit score is a number I didn't think was mathematically possible. I don't have the house, I don't have the car, and I definitely don't have Sarah. I didn't lose it to drugs. I didn't gamble it away in Vegas. I didn't get sued for malpractice. I lost every single thing I built because I was addicted to being the good son. I was addicted to being the hero who swooped in and fixed my parents' messes. And they knew it. They counted on it. They leveraged it until there was nothing left of me but a hollow shell. To understand why I did what I did, you have to understand the dynamic in the Miller house. My father, Arthur, was a man who always had a $1 million idea that just needed a little seed capital. He was a charmer, the kind of guy who could talk a dog off a meat wagon, but he had zero follow-through. My mother, Martha, was his enabler. She was fragile, anxious, the kind of woman who would burst into tears if the toast burned. And then there was my sister, Chloe. Chloe was the free spirit, the artist, the one who couldn't be tethered by rules or responsibilities. That left me, Caleb, the rock, the steady hand. Since I was 16, I was the one balancing their checkbook. I was the one negotiating with the utility company to keep the lights on. I was the one who paid for Chloe's textbooks when she decided to go to design school, and I was the one who paid her rent when she dropped out 6 months later. I wore that responsibility like a badge of honor. It made me feel necessary. It made me feel worthy of love. The beginning of the end started on a Tuesday in November. I remember the date perfectly because Sarah and I had just come back from the final walkthrough of the new house. We were sitting on the floor of the empty living room, eating takeout pizza on paper plates. The gas fireplace was on, casting this warm, orange glow over everything. Sarah looked at me, cheese stringing from her slice, and said, "Caleb, can you believe this is ours? We're actually doing this." I kissed her and told her it was only the beginning. We talked about where the Christmas tree would go. We argued playfully about whether the spare room should be a guest room or a nursery right away. I felt invincible. I felt like I had finally outrun the chaotic, broke childhood I grew up in. I had built a fortress of stability. That night we went to bed early. I fell asleep thinking about interest rates and furniture dimensions. At 2:13 a.m., my phone rang. It wasn't just a ring, it was an alarm. In the dead silence of the night, it sounded like a siren. I grabbed it off the nightstand, my heart hammering against my ribs. The screen lit up the room. Dad. My stomach dropped. Parents don't call at 2:13 a.m. to say hello. They call because someone is dead or someone is dying. I answered, my voice thick with sleep, asking what was wrong. On the other end, there was just heavy breathing, panicked, ragged gasps for air. "Dad!" I sat up, throwing the covers off. Sarah stirred beside me, mumbling something incoherent. "Dad, talk to me. What's happening?" "I ruined it," he whispered. His voice was shaking so bad I could barely understand him. "I ruined everything, Caleb. Oh, God, they're going to kill her." The cold that washed over me was instant. Who? Who is going to kill who? Is Mom okay? "For now," he sobbed. "For now. But they're outside, Caleb. There's a black sedan parked across the street. It's been there for 6 hours. They sent me a picture of the kitchen window. They're watching us." I was wide awake now, adrenaline flooding my system. I stood up and walked out into the hallway so I wouldn't wake Sarah. I kept my voice low but urgent. I told him to slow down. I asked him who they were. He told me a story that, in the moment, sounded terrifyingly plausible. He said that with inflation eating up his pension, he had gotten desperate. He said he wanted to surprise Mom with a cruise for their anniversary, so he tried to invest in a high-yield crypto scheme a friend told him about. But he didn't have the cash, so he borrowed it. Not from a bank, from a private lending group. He called them the Association. He said he borrowed $20,000. But the crypto tanked instantly. It was a rug pull. And when he went to tell the lenders he needed more time, they told him the terms had changed. With penalties and risk assessment fees, he now owed $50,000. $50,000? I hissed, pacing the length of my hallway. Dad, that's insane. That's illegal. These aren't legal people, Caleb, he screamed in a whisper. They aren't bankers. They're animals. They told me if I didn't have the full 50 by noon tomorrow, they were going to come inside. They said they'd start with Martha's fingers. I heard my mom whimpering in the background. Arthur? Arthur, tell him we love him. Tell him not to worry about us. That was the dagger. Hearing my mother, sounding so small, so resigned to her fate. It bypassed all my logic centers and went straight to my lizard brain. Protect, defend, fix. I'm calling the police, I said. Lock the doors. I'm calling 911 right now, and then I'm driving over there with my gun. No, Dad shrieked. It was a guttural sound. No police. Caleb, listen to me. They said, if they see a cop car, if they even smell a cop, they burn the house down. They know where you live, Caleb. They know about Sarah. They sent me a picture of you leaving your office. You cannot call the police. You will get us all killed. I froze. They knew about Sarah. I looked back into the bedroom. I could see the outline of her body under the duvet. The idea of violence touching her, it made me feel sick. Okay, I said, my voice trembling. Okay. No cops. But Dad, 50 grand. I just closed on the house. My cash reserves are tight. I know, he wept. I know, son. And I hate myself for asking. I'm a failure. I'm a terrible father. I should just go out there and let them kill me. Maybe then they'll leave your mother alone. Stop it, I snapped. Nobody's dying. I did the mental math. I had the money. It was the emergency fund, plus the money we had set aside for the wedding catering and the honeymoon. It would wipe me out almost completely until my next quarterly bonus, but I had it. Send me the wiring instructions, I said. I felt like I was swallowing glass. You'll do it, he asked, hope breaking through the panic. Caleb, I swear on my life I will pay you back. My annuity matures in 4 years. You'll get every cent with interest. You're saving our lives, son. You're an angel. I hung up. I stood in the dark hallway for a long time, just breathing. I walked into the home office. I booted up my laptop. The blue light stung my eyes. I logged into my bank account. The balance looked so healthy. It represented 5 years of skipped vacations, overtime shifts, and brown bag lunches. I opened the transfer portal. Dad had texted me the details. Apex Holdings, LLC. It sounded legitimate enough. Probably a shell company for the loan sharks to launder the money. I typed in the amount, $50,000. My finger hovered over the Submit button. A tiny voice in the back of my head screamed at me to stop. It told me to wake Sarah up. It told me to call the police anyway. It told me that something didn't smell right. But then I remembered the fear in my dad's voice. I remembered the whimper of my mother. I clicked Submit. A little green checkmark appeared on the screen. Transfer successful. I closed the laptop. I walked back to bed and slid in next to Sarah. She shifted in her sleep and draped an arm over my chest. She felt warm and safe. I lay there staring at the ceiling until the sun came up, telling myself I had done the right thing. I told myself it was just money. I could earn more money. I had saved my family. The nightmare was over. I had no idea that I had just fed a monster that would never, ever be full. They say the first cut is the deepest, but they're wrong. The first cut is just shock. It's the second cut that really kills you because you see the knife coming, you know exactly how much it's going to hurt, and you still don't move out of the way. For about 3 weeks after I wired that first 50,000, silence returned to my life. It was a heavy, anxious silence, but it was peaceful. I checked in on my parents every day. Dad sounded tired but relieved. Mom was resting. I told myself the crisis was averted. I told myself that 50 grand was a steep price for a lesson learned, but at least we were safe. I tried to get back to normal with Sarah. We were in full wedding planning mode, the venue was booked, the band was hired, and we were finalizing the menu. But I was distracted. Every time I swiped my debit card for a coffee, I felt a twinge of panic. I was constantly checking my banking app, staring at the dent in my savings, calculating how many months of strict budgeting it would take to refill the hole before Sarah noticed. I lied to her, of course, not a malicious lie, but a protective one. I told her the market had taken a dip and my portfolio was down, so we needed to be a little conservative with the extras for the wedding. She was understanding. She held my hand and told me we didn't need the expensive champagne toast anyway. She was perfect, and I was a fraud. Then came the second call. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was in the backyard raking leaves, trying to work off the nervous energy that had become my constant companion. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Dad. I didn't answer it immediately. I stared at the screen, and I felt this wave of nausea roll over me. I knew, somewhere deep in my gut, I knew it wasn't over. I answered. Dad, is everything okay? They came back, Caleb, he said. His voice wasn't frantic this time. It was hollow, dead. It was the voice of a man standing on a ledge. They said the 50,000 was just the good faith payment. It only covered the penalty fees and the interest for the last 2 months. I gripped the rake handle so hard a splinter dug into my palm. That's impossible, I said. You told me 50 cleared the debt. You said we were done. I thought we were, he cried out. I swear to God, Caleb, I thought that was it. But these people, they changed the rules. They said the principal is still outstanding. And because I missed the deadline for the full amount, the rate doubled. How much? I asked. I felt like I was floating outside my body. 100,000, he whispered. I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. It was a dark, hysterical sound. I don't have $100,000, Dad. I just gave you 50. I'm tapped out. Tell them to come get me. Tell them to sue me. I don't care. They don't want to sue you, Caleb, he said. They want to pay Chloe a visit. The world stopped. What did you say? They sent me a text, Dad said. Do you want me to forward it to you? It's a picture of Chloe walking out of her apartment building. The caption just says, "She looks like she breaks easy." My blood ran cold. My little sister. Chloe was annoying, irresponsible, and frustrating, but she was my sister. The idea of some thug hurting her because of my dad's stupidity was unbearable. Send me the screenshot, I commanded. He sent it. It was exactly what he described. A grainy photo of Chloe taken from a car window with that terrifying caption. I sat down on the cold grass. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just money anymore. This was a hostage situation. I need time, I told him. I can't just conjure 100 grand. Wednesday, Dad said. They said Wednesday, or they go see Chloe. That was 3 days away. I went inside and showered. I scrubbed my skin until it was red, trying to wash away the feeling of filth. Then I sat at the kitchen table and looked at my options. My liquid savings were gone. My checking account was for bills only. The only thing I had left was my future, my 401k. I had been contributing the max amount since I was 22. It was my pride and joy. It was the promise that I wouldn't end up like my parents, broke and desperate in old age. I logged into the brokerage account. The balance was there. Enough to cover the demand, plus the taxes and the early withdrawal penalties. But taking it out meant destroying a decade of hard work. It meant losing almost 40% of the value to the IRS and fees. It was financial suicide. But then I looked at the picture of Chloe again. I initiated the withdrawal. I marked the reason as hardship. I felt like weeping as I clicked through the warnings. Are you sure? This will significantly impact your retirement. Yes, I was sure. I wired the money to Apex Holdings LLC the next morning. The stress started to bleed out into the rest of my life immediately. At work, I was a ghost. I sat in meetings and heard nothing. I forgot to send important emails. My boss, a guy named Marcus who had been mentoring me for years, pulled me aside on Thursday. He asked me if everything was okay. He said I seemed off. He mentioned that I snapped at the intern for bringing me the wrong coffee, which wasn't like me. I lied to him too. I told him it was just wedding stress. I told him I wasn't sleeping well. He bought it, but I could see the concern in his eyes. I was losing my edge. I was losing my reputation. But the worst part was Sarah. She came home late on Friday looking confused. She was holding a letter in her hand. "Caleb," she said, walking into the kitchen where I was staring blankly at the wall. The caterer called, and then this letter came. It was a notice from the venue. We had missed the second deposit date. My heart hammered. I had completely forgotten. In the chaos of liquidating the 401k and wiring the money to Apex, I had missed the deadline for our wedding venue. I must have mixed up the dates, I stammered, standing up. I'll write them a check right now. With what? Sarah asked. Her voice was quiet, scary, quiet. I looked at the joint account, Caleb. The transfer for the venue didn't go through because of insufficient funds. And then I looked at the savings. It's almost empty. I froze. I hadn't realized she checked the savings that often. There was an investment opportunity, I lied. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. A friend from college. It's short-term, high yield. I moved the money there to grow it a bit before the wedding expenses hit hard. Sarah stared at me. She didn't blink. You moved $50,000 into an investment without talking to me, 2 months before our wedding? I wanted to surprise you, I said, trying to sound confident. I wanted to upgrade the honeymoon. I'm sorry, babe. I should have told you. But the money is safe. It's just tied up for a few weeks. She looked at me for a long time. I saw something flicker in her eyes. It wasn't anger. It was doubt. It was the first crack in the foundation of trust we had built over 5 years. Fix it, she said. Get the money back. Pay the venue, or we don't have a wedding. She walked out of the room. I stood there in the kitchen, trembling. I had sent $150,000 into the void. I had lied to my boss. I had lied to my fiancé. I called Dad that night. I didn't yell. I was too tired to yell. It's done, I told him. The money is with Apex. You are clear. But Dad, listen to me. If they ask for one more penny, I can't do it. I will lose Sarah. I will lose everything. I know, son, Dad said, his voice thick with emotion. I know the sacrifice you're making. You're the best man I know. We are safe now. Mom is sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks. You did it. You saved us. I hung up and poured myself a drink. A stiff one. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that the bleeding had stopped. But as I looked around my beautiful house, the house I was secretly terrified I wouldn't be able to afford the mortgage on next month, I realized that I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a mark. And I should have listened to that feeling. Because the bleeding hadn't stopped. It had only just begun. The thing about secrets is that they have mass. They take up space in a room. You think you've hidden them away in a drawer or a dark corner of your mind, but they sit there, invisible and heavy, pushing everything else out until there's no room left for the good stuff. For 2 weeks after the second payment, the air in our house was suffocating. Sarah knew I was lying about the investment, but she couldn't prove it. She stopped talking about the wedding. She stopped touching me. We were like two ghosts haunting the same four-bedroom colonial. Then came the tax season. I was at work, trying to save my job. My performance had tanked so hard that Marcus had put me on a performance improvement plan. Corporate speak for you have 30 days to fix this or you're fired. I was staring at a spreadsheet, trying to focus, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. 3 words. Come home. Now. I didn't ask why. I knew. I grabbed my keys, walked out of the office without telling anyone, and drove home. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely keep the steering wheel straight. When I walked into the kitchen, Sarah was sitting at the island. In front of her was a shoebox. The shoebox. The one I kept on the top shelf of the closet, hidden behind my winter coats. I had been dumb enough to keep the wire transfer confirmations there. I told myself I needed them for records, just in case I ever got the money back. She didn't yell. She looked incredibly calm, which was terrifying. She was holding one of the receipts. Apex Holdings, LLC, she read aloud. Her voice was flat. Wire transfer, $100,000. Date, last Tuesday. She picked up another one. Apex Holdings, LLC, $50,000. Date, November. She looked up at me. Her eyes were red, but dry. Who is Apex Holdings, Caleb? And don't you dare tell me it's an investment. I collapsed into the chair opposite her. The lie was too heavy to carry anymore, so I vomited the truth. All of it. I told her about the calls, the association, the threat to break Mom's fingers, the photo of Chloe outside her apartment. I told her I had emptied the savings and the 401k to save their lives. I was crying by the end of it, expecting her to understand. I expected her to see me as the protector. She stared at me for a long time. Then she asked a question that shattered me. Did you see the loan papers? I wiped my face. What? The loan papers, Caleb. The contract your dad signed with these people. Did you see it? No, I said defensively. He said it was a handshake deal with some bad guys. Did you see the threat? She asked. Did you hear the guys on the phone? Did you see the car outside the house? Dad told me. Dad told you. She slammed her hand on the counter, making me jump. Dad told you. Caleb, are you hearing yourself? You just torched our future. Our wedding. Our house. Your retirement. Because your father told you a story? You didn't verify anything? You didn't go to the police? I couldn't, I shouted back. They would have hurt them. You are being conned, she said. She stood up, shaking her head. You are being conned by the people who are supposed to love you. And the worst part is, you let them rob me too. That money was for us. For our children. I did it for family, I screamed. You don't understand loyalty. She stopped. She looked at me with this profound pity that hurt worse than her anger. I do understand loyalty, she said softly. I was loyal to you, but you're not loyal to me. You're loyal to them. And you always will be. If your dad calls tomorrow and says he needs a kidney, you'll cut yours out in the kitchen sink. She walked to the bedroom. I heard the zipper of a suitcase. I didn't follow her. I couldn't. I sat there with my head in my hands, listening to the sound of my life falling apart. When she walked back, out, she placed her engagement ring on the granite countertop. It made a sharp click. I can't marry a martyr, Caleb, she said. I can't build a life on a foundation that you're willing to set on fire every time your parents get cold. The front door closed. The lock clicked. And just like that, she was gone. I sat in that kitchen until it got dark. I didn't turn on the lights. I felt like I'd been hollowed out with a spoon. 3 days later, the phone rang. I knew who it was. I almost didn't answer. I was drunk, halfway through a bottle of whiskey I found in the cabinet. What? I slurred into the phone. Caleb. It was Dad. He sounded wrecked. I don't know how to tell you this. Then don't, I said. Sarah left me, Dad. She's gone. Because of you. I know. He wept. I'm so sorry. I hate myself. But Caleb, they want a final settlement. They said they're tired of the installments. They want to close the book. $150,000. One lump sum. And then they walk away forever. They sign a release. It's over. I laughed. It was a wet, ugly sound. I don't have it. I have $0, Dad. I have negative dollars. Go tell them to kill me. I don't care anymore. They won't kill you, Dad whispered. They're going to burn Chloe's apartment building down tonight, with her inside it. I closed my eyes. I saw Chloe's face. I saw Sarah's face. I saw the ruin of my life. I have nothing, I said. The house, Dad said. I froze. What? You have equity, he said quickly. Too quickly. The market is up, Caleb. You could sell it. You could pay them off and still have enough to start over. Please, son. It's the last time. I swear on your mother's life, it's the last time. The house, the symbol of everything I had achieved, the place where I was supposed to raise a family. Okay, I whispered. Okay. I listed the house the next day, because it was a hot market, and because I priced it for a quick sale. It sold in 48 hours to an all-cash buyer. The process was a blur of humiliation. I had to stand there while strangers walked through my bedroom, opening my closets, judging my life. I sold the Audi, too. I sold the furniture. I sold everything that wasn't nailed down. I walked out of the closing attorney's office 2 weeks later with a check. I wired $350,000, the total sum of my existence, to Apex Holdings, LLC. I was left with about $4,000. I rented a studio apartment in a part of town I used to tell Sarah to avoid driving through at night. It was a single room above a laundromat. The carpet was sticky. The window looked out onto a brick wall. On my first night there, I sat on a blow-up mattress eating instant noodles made with tap water. I looked around at the peeling paint and the water stains on the ceiling. I had no fiancé, no career. Marcus had finally fired me the day before the move because I stopped showing up. No house, no car, but I checked my phone. Dad had sent a text. Thank you, son. We are safe. You are our hero. I stared at the word hero. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a sucker, and as I lay there in the dark, listening to the sirens outside and the rats scratching in the walls, a thought started to creep in. A thought I had pushed away for 6 months. A thought Sarah had tried to give me before she walked out the door. Why did Dad know exactly how much equity was in the house? He knew the number. He knew the market was up. He suggested it before I even thought of it. I sat up on the mattress, my heart racing for a different reason now. I needed to see them. I needed to see the fear in their eyes. I needed to know that my sacrifice was real. Because if it wasn't, if Sarah was right, then I hadn't just sacrificed my life. I had been harvested. Part 4. The Discovery. Poverty has a smell. It smells like dust, old frying oil, and damp drywall. It gets into your clothes, your hair, your skin. For 6 months, that smell was my cologne. I was working 2 jobs, stocking shelves at a grocery store overnight and driving for a food delivery app during the day. It was humiliating. I delivered sushi to an office building once where I used to have meetings. I pulled my cap down low so none of my old colleagues would recognize the guy who used to be a project manager handing them their spicy tuna rolls. I hadn't seen my parents much since the house sale. I couldn't bring myself to go over there. I told them I was busy rebuilding. The truth was, I was ashamed. I didn't want them to see what their safety had cost me. I didn't want them to see the dark circles under my eyes or the way my hands shook from caffeine and exhaustion. But it was Mom's 60th birthday. That's a milestone you can't ignore, even when you're living in a shoebox. I scraped together $40 to buy her a nice bouquet of flowers and took the bus, out to the suburbs. I remember sitting on that bus, staring out the window, preparing myself for the atmosphere I expected to find. A house living in fear, blinds drawn, parents aging rapidly from the trauma of the cartel threats. I walked up the driveway. The first thing I noticed was the landscaping. My dad used to do the yard work himself to save money, but the hedges were laser straight. The lawn was a perfect emerald green carpet. There was fresh mulch in the flower beds, the expensive black kind. Maybe the neighbors pitched in, I thought. Maybe the community rallied around them. I rang the bell. Dad opened the door. He wasn't wearing his usual stained sweatpants. He was wearing pressed khakis and a polo shirt that looked crisp and new. "Caleb," he boomed, pulling me into a hug. He smelled like expensive cologne, sandalwood and something else, something pricey. I stepped inside. The house didn't feel like a bunker. It felt like a resort. The air conditioning was blasting, something they never did because Dad was obsessive about the electric bill. There was jazz playing softly from a sound system I didn't recognize. "Where's Mom?" I asked, clutching my pathetic gas station flowers. "In the kitchen," Dad said, ushering me in. "She's so excited to see you." I walked into the kitchen and froze. The table was set with the good china. There were bottles of wine open, Barolo, vintage, and on the counter 3 thick ribeye steaks were resting on a wooden board, glistening with herb butter. Mom turned around from the stove. "Happy birthday," I said, forcing a smile. She beamed at me. And that's when the first domino fell. My mother had always hated her teeth. She had a gap in the front and significant staining from 40 years of coffee drinking. She used to cover her mouth when she laughed. But the smile she flashed me was blinding. Perfect, uniform, gleaming white porcelain. I stared. I couldn't help it. "Mom, your teeth." She flinched, her hand flying to her mouth instinctively, then dropping. "Oh, yes. Isn't it amazing? Chloe found this dental school program. They needed seniors for practice. Did it for free. Can you believe it?" "A dental school? For veneers? That was cosmetic work worth 20 grand, minimum. Dental schools don't do free Hollywood makeovers." I looked at Dad. He was pouring the wine. As he tipped the bottle, his sleeve rode up. Gold, stainless steel. A heavy, masculine watch face with a distinct blue bezel. A Rolex Submariner. I felt a ringing in my ears, the same ringing I felt when Sarah left. "Nice watch," I said. My voice sounded distant, like it was coming from underwater. Dad jerked his arm back, pulling the sleeve down. He laughed, a nervous, high-pitched titter. "This piece of junk. Can you believe the fakes they make these days? I got it off a guy on Canal Street for $50. Just wanted to feel fancy for your mother's big day." I sat down at the table. I watched the second hand on his watch. Cheap quartz watches, tick, 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 tick. Rolex's sweep. A smooth, continuous glide. I watched Dad's wrist as he cut his steak. The second hand was sweeping. Smooth as silk. We ate dinner. They talked about the weather. They talked about a new show on Netflix. They didn't talk about the debt. They didn't talk about the association. They didn't ask me how I was surviving in a studio apartment with no furniture. They were happy. They were glowing. They looked 10 years younger. "So," I said, putting my fork down, "how's Chloe doing? I haven't heard from her." "Oh, she's doing wonderful," Mom said, sipping her expensive wine. "Her art is finally taking off. She sold a huge commission to a tech startup. She's actually the one who bought the steaks tonight. She's such a generous girl." Chloe, my sister who once borrowed money from me to buy a hamster. Chloe was bankrolling this. I left as soon as the cake was cut. I couldn't breathe in there anymore. The air felt thick with lies. I didn't go home. I sat in my beat-up Honda Civic, which I'd bought for $800 after selling the Audi, down the street, watching their house. At 9 p.m., the lights went out. At 9:30 p.m., a car pulled into the driveway. It wasn't a black sedan with thugs. It was a white Range Rover. Chloe hopped out. She was wearing designer boots and carrying a Louis Vuitton bag. She used a key to let herself in. I drove away, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I needed proof. I knew it in my bones now. Sarah was right. The equity comment, the timing, the teeth, the watch. It was all a show. But knowing it and proving it were two different things. The universe, in its twisted sense of humor, decided to hand me the smoking gun 2 weeks later. Chloe texted me, "Hey, big bro, I'm moving apartments this weekend. My movers are flaking on the last few boxes. Any chance you could come help me? I'll buy pizza." I stared at the text. This was it. "Sure," I typed back. "Send the address." She sent an address in the Arts District, the Soulless Lofts. I looked it up. Studio apartments started at $3,200 a month. Penthouse suites were $6,000. I showed up on Saturday morning. The building had a doorman. A doorman. I went up to the 12th floor. Chloe opened the door, looking flustered but expensive. She was wearing Lululemon leggings and a cashmere sweater. "You are a lifesaver," she squealed, hugging me. She didn't smell like poverty. She smelled like money. "Nice place," I said, looking around. It was huge, floor-to-ceiling windows, hardwood floors. "That big commission must have been really big." "Huge," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "Tech bros have too much money, right? Anyway, the office is a disaster. Can you tackle the boxes in there while I coordinate with the truck downstairs?" "On it," I said. She grabbed her purse and ran out. I walked into the second bedroom she was using as an office. It was a mess of packing peanuts and boxes, but my eyes went straight to the desk. There was a brand new iMac, top spec, and next to it a shredder that was jammed. It was overflowing with paper strips. She had been shredding documents before the move, but she'd gotten lazy or the machine had overheated. There was a stack of papers sitting right next to it, waiting to be destroyed. My heart started hammering against my ribs. I walked over. I picked up the stack. Top page, a receipt for a custom sofa, $4,000. Second page, a lease agreement for the Soulless Lofts. Third page. My breath hitched. It was a bank statement. Cayman National Bank. I flipped it over. Account holder. The AMC Revocable Trust. AMC. Arthur, Martha, Chloe. I felt dizzy. I had to lean against the desk to keep from falling. I scanned the transaction history. November 15th, incoming wire, $50,000 via Apex Holdings, LLC. November 30th, incoming wire, $100,000 ART via Apex Holdings, LLC. December 28th, incoming wire, $50,000 via Apex Holdings, LLC. February 15th, incoming wire, $150,000 via Apex Holdings, LLC. The dates matched my nightmares. November 15th was the morning after the first call. November 30th was the day I liquidated my 401k. February 15th was the day I sold my house. Apex Holdings LLC wasn't a loan shark collection agency. It wasn't a cartel front. It was a shell company. My shell company. They had set up a fake company, scared me into wiring my life savings into it, and then funneled the money offshore into a family trust that included everyone but me. I looked at the outflows. Debit, Smile Perfect Cosmetic Dentistry, $24,500. Debit, Swiss Horology Imports, $12,000. Debit, Soulless Lofts Security Deposit, $6,400. Debit, Carnival Cruise Lines Royal Suite, $8,200. I sank to the floor. I sat there amidst the packing peanuts, holding the piece of paper that proved my entire life had been dismantled not by enemies, but by the people who changed my diapers. The loan shark. The threats. The black sedan. It was a script. A screenplay written by my failed screenwriter of a father, directed by my manipulative mother, and starring my greedy sister. And I was the audience. I was the producer who funded the whole production. I heard the front door beep. Chloe was back. "Pizza's here," she called out cheerfully. I shoved the bank statement down the front of my shirt, right against my skin. It felt like it was burning me. I stood up. I looked at myself in the reflection of the dark window. I looked ragged, broken, poor, and they were rich. rich with my money. I walked out into the living room. Chloe was putting a pizza box on the quartz island. "Did you finish the office?" she asked, grabbing a slice. I looked at her. I looked at her perfect skin, her expensive clothes, her carefree smile. I realized then that she didn't just take my money. She took my life so she could have a better one. "Yeah," I said. My voice was eerily calm. I finished. I grabbed a slice of pizza. I ate it. I helped her move for 2 more hours. I carried her boxes. I assembled her bed frame. I played the part of the dumb, loyal mule one last time. But as I drove away from the soulless lofts that evening, touching the paper hidden in my shirt, I wasn't the good son anymore. The good son died in that apartment. And the man who replaced him? He was about to become their worst nightmare. I didn't scream. I didn't drive back to their house and kick the door down. I didn't set fire to Chloe's new building. The rage I felt was cold. It was absolute zero. It was the kind of anger that sharpens your focus rather than clouding it. I drove home to my studio apartment and taped that bank statement to the wall above my blow-up mattress. I stared at it for 3 days. I memorized every transaction, every date, every dollar stolen from my future to fund their present. I needed a weapon. I remembered Sarah mentioning a forensic accountant her firm used for divorce cases, a guy named Henderson who could find a penny hidden in a haystack. I Googled him. He had a private practice now. I called his office on Monday morning. I told the receptionist I had a case of familial fraud involving offshore accounts and shell companies. When I met Henderson, I looked like a bum. I was wearing my delivery driver uniform because I had a shift right after. But when I laid the photos of the bank statement and the wire transfer receipts on his mahogany desk, he stopped looking at my clothes and started looking at the evidence. He whistled low. "This is comprehensive," he said. "They weren't even careful. They used the same LLC for everything. It's a direct line from your bank to their pockets." "Can we get it back?" I asked. "We can freeze it," he said. "If we file an emergency injunction today, we can lock that Cayman account before they sip another Mai Tai." "But Caleb, this is the nuclear option. Once we file this, there is no going back. You are declaring war on your parents." I looked at the photo of Chloe's receipt for the veneers. "File it." It took a week to get the paperwork sealed and the freeze order executed. Henderson worked on contingency because he said the case was disgustingly winnable. Once the trap was set, I sent the text. A group chat to Dad, Mom, and Chloe. "Hey everyone, big news. I finally caught a break. Meet me at Denny's on 4th Street. Dinner's on me." I chose Denny's on purpose. I wanted the fluorescent lights. I wanted the sticky tables. I wanted the contrast. They arrived 20 minutes late. It was a Tuesday night. Chloe walked in first, wearing sunglasses indoors and clutching a Balenciaga bag that cost more than my car. Dad was behind her, wearing the Rolex, trying to look casual, but failing. Mom was glowing, her expensive teeth flashing at the hostess. They slid into the booth opposite me. I was already halfway through a cup of black coffee. "Caleb," Mom gushed, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. Her diamond tennis bracelet clinked against the table. "We were so worried. You sounded so excited in your text. Did you get a promotion? Did you get your job back?" "Better," I said, pulling my hand away. "I found some money." Their eyes lit up. It was immediate. A biological reaction to the scent of prey. "Really?" Dad asked, leaning in. "That's fantastic, son. How much?" "Enough to fix everything," I said. "Enough to settle accounts." Chloe popped her gum. "Well, you should definitely move out of that gross apartment. Maybe get a place near me. The Solis has vacancies." I looked at my sister. I looked at the face of the girl I used to carry on my shoulders when she was tired. "Actually," I said, reaching into my backpack, "I wanted to talk about where the money came from." I pulled out the thick manila envelope Henderson had prepared. I didn't slide it across the table. I dropped it. It landed. with a heavy thud that rattled the silverware. "It came from the Cayman Islands," I said. The silence that followed was louder than a gunshot. Dad went rigid. His face turned a color I'd never seen before, like gray putty. Mom stopped smiling, her hand hovering near her mouth. Chloe froze, her gum mid-chew. I don't understand," Dad stammered, but he did. He understood perfectly. "The AMC Trust," I said, my voice dead calm. "Arthur, Martha, Chloe. Account number ending in 4922. I opened the folder and spread the photos on the table. The wire transfers, the receipts for the cosmetic surgery, the cruise booking, the lease agreement. "Apex Holdings isn't a cartel," I said. "It's you. It's always been you." Mom started to cry, but it wasn't the scared crying from the phone calls. It was the frantic, cornered crying of a child caught stealing candy. "Caleb, listen," she wailed, grabbing Dad's arm. "You have to understand. We did it for you." I stared at her. "You stole $350,000 from me." "For me." "Yes," she insisted, her voice rising. People in other booths were starting to look. "That girl, Sarah, she was going to leave you. We knew it. She was going to divorce you and take half of everything. We had to protect the family wealth. We were holding it for you." "Holding it?" I laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. "You spent 50 grand on teeth and watches in 3 months. You're not holding my money. You're eating it." "We had expenses," Dad shouted, slamming his hand on the table. The frail victim act was gone. He was angry now. "We raised you. We put a roof over your head for 18 years. You owed us. You were sitting in that big house with your fancy job while we were struggling on a pension. It wasn't fair." "Fair?" I stood up. I loomed over them. "I was going to take care of you. I always took care of you. But you didn't want care. You wanted my life. You wanted to strip me for parts." "You ungrateful little prick," Chloe spat. "Mom and Dad are old. They deserve to enjoy their lives. You can make more money. You're young." "Not anymore," I said. "I'm broke. I'm 32, and I have nothing." I pointed a finger at Dad's chest. "But neither do you." Dad narrowed his eyes. "What does that mean?" "It means I saw a lawyer," I said. "It means an emergency injunction was filed this morning at 9:40 a.m. The Cayman account is frozen. The assets are frozen. You can't access a single cent." Dad's face crumbled. You can't do that. That's our money." "It's my money," I corrected, "and I'm suing you. For fraud, for theft by deception, for emotional distress. Henderson says by the time we're done I'll own your house, I'll own your car, and I'll probably own Chloe's Louis Vuitton bag too." Mom let out a screech. "You'd sue your own parents. Caleb, we're family." "Family doesn't extort their children with fake death. Threats," I said. "Family doesn't let their son sell his home to buy them a cruise." I threw a $20 bill onto the table. "Enjoy the Grand Slam," I said. "It's the last meal I'm ever buying you." I turned and walked away. "Caleb," Dad roared after me, "if you walk out that door, you have no father. Do you hear me? You're dead to us." I didn't turn around. I pushed through the glass doors into the cold night air, and for the first time in 6 months, I could breathe. The fallout was ugly. They fought it, of course. They tried to claim the money was a gift. They tried to claim I was mentally unstable. But the paper trail was bulletproof. The forensic accounting showed the direct flow of funds from my distressed withdrawals to their luxury purchases. They had to sell the house to pay the legal fees and the settlement. They moved into a small apartment 2 towns over. Chloe had to move back in with them because she couldn't afford the soulless rent without the trust fund. I haven't spoken to them in 8 months. I blocked their numbers. I blocked their emails. I got about 60% of the money back. The rest had been burned on their lifestyle and legal costs. It wasn't enough to buy my old house back. Prices had gone up too much, but it was enough to get me out of the studio. I rented a decent 1-bedroom. I bought a reliable car. I started going to therapy. And last week, I finally worked up the courage to make the call I should have made a year ago. "Hello?" Her voice sounded the same. Clear. Calm. "Hey, Sarah," I said. "It's Caleb." There was a long pause. "Hi, Caleb." "I'm not calling to beg," I said quickly. I wanted to tell you that you were right. About everything. The loan papers, the con, the loyalty." "You found out?" she asked. Her voice softened. "Yeah, I found out the hard way. They took everything, Sarah, but I sued them. I got some of it back. I cut them off." "I'm proud of you," she said. And she meant it. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice cracking. "I'm sorry I chose them over us. It's the biggest regret of my life." "I know," she said. "Caleb, I'm seeing someone else. It's new, but I am." The words hurt, but they were fair. "I understand." "But," she said, "I'd like to grab coffee. As friends. I'd like to hear how you stood up to them." "Coffee sounds good," I said. I hung up the phone. I walked over to the window of my new apartment. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't the life I thought I'd have at 32, but as I looked out at the city lights, I realized something. My bank account was smaller. My circle was smaller. My heart was a little bit harder. But I was free. I wasn't the good son anymore. I wasn't the fixer. I was just Caleb. And for the first time in my life, that was enough.
Thanks for watching and listening to Manhattan Exposes. What story would you like to hear next? Drop it in the comments below, and kindly leave a like and subscribe to hear more stories like this. Until next time.